Hey, welcome back. So in this lesson, we're going to be learning about how to work with numbers and do math while we program. So first lesson, we learned about getting input and printing things out and how to work with strings. Now we're going to learn about two new data types. Remember, a data type is how does the computer represent or understand what a piece of information is. So a string was text, words, letters, sentences, that kind of thing. We have two more that we need to think about, and they are called integers and floats. Both of them are representing numbers. An integer, often represented as int, but in here it is just called number. Both of them are considered numbers, but they are treated a little bit different. So number 12 is an integer. So you've probably already seen this in math. You already know what an integer is. A float is just the computer science word for a decimal number. So for example, 3.14 is a float. Float is short for a floating point number. And that gets into some details we don't really need to worry about. We just need to know integers are whole numbers, floats are decimal numbers. And most of the time we're going to want to try to work with integers because computers are better with integers than they are with floats. So we also need to know how to do math with that. So I'm going to create a couple of variables and we'll see how we do math with these kind of numbers. So once again, we create variables using var. I'm going to have number 1 and I'll give it a value of 5. I'm going to have number 2. I'm going to give it a number, say 8. And then I'm going to print out different kinds of math operations and see if it gets the right answer. So we're going to do console log. And the first thing we're going to do is how do we add numbers together? And you can probably guess we just add numbers by using the plus sign. Number 1 plus number 2. I could put in 5 plus 8 here directly, but we very rarely work with numbers directly. Typically, we're using numbers stored in variables. So I'm going to do all of this with variables. But just so you know, this would work perfectly fine as well. So I'll just go back to what we had before. That's how we add. How we subtract works exactly how you would think. We do number 1 minus number 2. Works perfectly good. How we multiply is not with an X. Instead, we use the star for multiplying. So number 1 star number 2 is how we multiply. Okay? Finally, how do we divide? Console.log is with the slash. Just like that. So, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Alright? All 4 of our basic math operations. And we can just hit run program here and see if it gets the right answer. So it's saying 5 plus 3 is 13. Saying 5 minus 3 is negative 3. It's saying 5 minus 8 is negative 3. 5 times 8 is 40. And 5 divided by 8 is 0.625. Right? And that's how we do math. Note that these ones do not have a decimal point, whereas this one does. That means that these first 3 are integers, whereas the last one is a floating point. Why does this matter? So I'm going to show you, whenever you're working with integers, it's going to do the math perfectly. However, when you work with decimal numbers or floats, it's going to sometimes make mistakes. And this happens with every computer. Doesn't mean whatever language you're using, this is going to be a problem. Even your calculator has this problem. but smart people have done some stuff in order to correct for this error. So what if I'm just going to add two numbers together, and those two numbers I'm going to add together are 0.1 and 0.2. What is the answer to 0.1 plus 0.2? Well, it's 0.3, right? That is the correct answer. The computer disagrees though. It thinks that it's 0.3000004. This is a problem whenever you're working with decimal numbers. And it's always going to be an issue. So something you need to be aware of and when you're working with them. Usually it's just going to be wrong way down here. And so you could round the number in order to correct for that kind of stuff. But it is something you need to be aware of. So try to avoid using decimal numbers if you don't have to. Because if you work with integers, it's always going to get the right answer. But if you're working with decimal numbers, it can be off by a little bit. Next, how do we get number input from the user? When we get input from the user using prompt, it always gives us a string, which means that the computer is going to think that it's a sentence or characters or text of some kind. But we need the computer to say, no, this is a number, treat it like a number. So I am going to ask the user to enter in two numbers, and then we're going to add them together, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to have my two variables again. Number one, I'm going to say prompt, enter first number, just like this. I'm going to copy this because I'm just basically going to do the same thing. Do it again. But, oops. It's going to be number 2. And rather than first number, it's going to be second number. And then I'm going to just print out what the two of them added together are. Console.log. And I'm going to do number 1 plus number 2. I don't have to assign this to a variable first. Whenever we do this, it will evaluate what the answer is before it prints it out if we do this. It can be a good idea to do it ahead of time, but for our purposes, we don't have to. So I'm going to put this in, and we're going to have an issue. What issue do you think we have? I'm going to put in first number is 2, the second number is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, right? It doesn't give me 5. It gives me 23. That's because this is a string, this is a string, so the computer thinks both of these are text, and when we add text together, it just joins them together. So the 2 came first, followed by 3, that's where we got 23. What we need to do is first tell the computer that no, these aren't characters, these aren't strings, these are numbers. And after we tell it it's a number, then we're like, oh, I know how to add numbers. Numbers add like this, and it'll get the right answer. So what we do, there's going to be a shorter way to do this, but we'll start off with the longer way, just so you can kind of understand what's happening. I'm going to do number 1 equals number 1. And what this is called is casting, which is turning one variable type into another. So what the variable type we're turning it into is a number variable type. So it's going to take whatever we enter in here, turn it into a number variable type, and assign it back. And I'll do the same thing with number 2. Just like that. And now, if I do exactly the same thing, we'll get the right answer. So run the program. First number is 2, second number is 3, and now we got the right answer, 5. So that's a very important thing to remember. When you're getting input from the user, it always starts off as a string. But if you want to use it as if it is a number, you need to tell the computer, no, this is not a string, this is a number. And that's how we do it. The way that we can do this a little bit shorter though, I'm just going to extend this a little bit, is I'm going to turn it into a number on the same line that I asked for the input. The way we do that is we do number, bracket, and I'm going to put that entire prompt, so all of that is going to be inside of those new brackets of number. And what it does is it asks for the number, but it's going to be a string. We take that string, we cast it to a number, then we assign it to our variable. So now I don't need this. I'm going to do the same thing here. Wrap our prompt inside the brackets. I'll delete that again. And now we can run it again and we'll see we get the same behavior. So 2, 3, and we still get 5. So that's just a bit of a shorter way to do the same thing. That is pretty much everything that we need for the next assignment. There are going to be a couple things that you want to think about when you are printing stuff out though. And one of those things is, how do we round our numbers? So for example, let's look at that previous example before. If I put in 0.1, 0.2, I get that wrong answer. But I want to round it. How can I do that? Well, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to create a new variable, call it the answer, where I am going to do this addition. Then, when I'm printing it out, I'm going to do answer. That still has the same issue. I haven't actually fixed the issue, but this is where things are different. Before I print it out, I'm going to use the toFixed method, like this. And this will round it to a certain number of decimal points. And how many decimal points is going to depend on what number I put inside of these brackets. I'm going to say I want it to be 2 decimal points. So, print out the answer, but before you do, round it to 2 decimal points. Let's do it again and see how this is different. So, first number, 0.1. Second number, 0.2. And now, it prints it out with the 2 decimal points that I asked for. I could change it to 5. 0.1, 0.2, and now I got 5 decimal points. And because we're rounding it like this, it's now also giving us the correct answer. So that is going to be a very useful way to be able to print out floating point numbers, decimal numbers, without getting all these extra digits that also make it wrong. Because we don't want to see this, we just want to see a nice number like that usually. So that is all the new stuff that we need for our new assignment. So we'll stop there. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.